Now, these are just a few examples of companies that unfortunately are making headlines for the wrong reasons. Now, we're not trying to embarrass these particular companies, but we want to use our examples to talk about specific areas of failure that may be helpful to all of us as we look at where we might be vulnerable. So CardioNet is the first example. The learning here is that they were not fined $2.5 million for losing the laptop. They were fined that amount because upon investigating, it was discovered that their risk plan was in draft form only and had not been implemented. Memorial Healthcare Systems was fined $5.5 million. They actually had a great plan in place. They just didn't execute on it. The main lesson we at Crossroads and other cybersecurity experts want you to understand is that we must do everything we can to prevent breaches or failures from happening. So far, over $67 million in fines have been handed out already. Obviously, the most important consideration is that we have a moral and ethical obligation to protect patient information. Let's take a look at the why behind these increases. The OCR launched a new initiative meant to give their regional offices increased investigatory and enforcement authority. A breach impacting fewer than 500 individuals will be investigated by a regional office. This increase in involvement for regional offices means that smaller breaches will be under more security, more scrutiny than ever before. In 2017, Phase 2 of the HIPAA privacy, security, and breach notification audit will continue as planned. Now, what's important to understand is the big change between Phase 1 and Phase 2 is that during Phase 1 of the audit, if it was determined that you had a breach, you were fined for that breach alone. During Phase 2, you can now be fined simply for not having the appropriate plans or agreements in place. It is especially important to pay attention to the documentation of requirements for your business associate contracts. Now let's walk through the process of how you should begin to protect yourself. The first step is to identify. Here we're really talking about identifying assets. An asset is anything that touches PHI, and an analysis of all of these assets should be included in a risk assessment. The second step is to analyze your risks and vulnerabilities. It is important to understand every possible vulnerability to your assets. Once you have those identified, the analysis is to understand the risks, or probabilities and means of attack or failure on each of these, and start to put plans in place on how to mitigate those risks. After you've done this, the third step is to manage, which is to use all of this information you have gathered on assets, risks, and vulnerabilities, and put a plan in place and execute on that plan to reduce both current and future risks. We're going to discuss 8 of the key areas of vulnerabilities. Now, these are by no means meant to be an all-inclusive list, but meant to highlight some of the key areas and get you thinking about the process of analyzing and managing. Unencrypted data. In order for data to be secure, it must be protected throughout its life cycle. It is therefore important to consider the state of the data you are trying to protect. Some other considerations. Do you have a policy in place that prevents sending identifiable patient data over email without written consent? How clear is your policy and education on phishing scams, clicking on unverified links in unsolicited emails, etc.? A business associate is any party outside of a company's own employees that may need access to or work with PHI data on behalf of that employer. Insider threats. Do you have rights protocols? Do you have monitoring protocols? Can you monitor single sign-on access? One key vulnerability is the perception that if we comply, we are secure, and if we are secure, we are in compliance. Both security and compliance are crucial. As you can see from the diagram here, HITRUST is more inclusive of protective protocols and includes HIPAA, HITECH, PCI, and many, many others. Many organizations are moving beyond HIPAA and participating in HITRUST as a way to guarantee that their data is protected and secure. I want to emphasize again that the point of our conversation today is that you act and act quickly. We would be happy to be your partner, but if not us, we would encourage you to find someone who is a good fit for you and your organization. The cost of inaction is much greater than the actual cost of prevention. Thanks again for participating today, and have a great day.